Cale Thorne adjusted his recording equipment as the transport ship shuddered through the atmosphere of Kepler 442c. The young Villani documentarian had done this job dozens of times before, but never for something so trivial. Recording primitive, human combat techniques seemed like a waste of his talents. Another backwater colony, he muttered, checking his camera feeds. The advanced recording gear hummed quietly around his four-armed frame. His superior had been clear about the mission. Document human savagery for the Imperial War Archives. The footage would help justify the Villani Empire's expansion policies. General Vex, the commanding officer of the 47th Assault Division, approached Kyle's station. The general's six eyes gleamed with anticipation. "Ready to capture some entertaining footage, documentarian?" "Of course, General. Though I doubt these humans will provide anything remarkable. From what I understand, they've been holding out for 6 months with farming tools and mining equipment." General Vex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Exactly. Why, this will be over quickly. The High Command wants evidence of their primitive fighting methods. Show the galaxy what happens when inferior species resist Villani rule." Through the transport's viewing port, Kyle could see the human settlement. Below, it looked ordinary enough. A collection of buildings surrounded by agricultural fields. Smoke rose from several locations where earlier bombardments had struck. The humans had managed to shoot down 3 Villani scouts, which was mildly impressive, but hardly threatening. Intelligence reports suggest around 2,000 humans in the colony. General Vex continued. They have no military training, no proper weapons, and no hope. This will be educational for your archives. Cale nodded and began recording as the first wave of Villani troops dropped toward the settlement. His equipment automatically tracked heat signatures and movement patterns. Everything seemed routine until the landing began. The humans didn't retreat to defensible positions as Kyle expected. Instead, they scattered in all directions like insects when disturbed. This wasn't standard defensive doctrine according to any military manual Cale knew. Captain Lee Jiho crouched behind an overturned farming vehicle, watching the alien invaders land. The human captain's face was grim, but determined. He spoke quietly into his communication device. "All units, remember the plan. Let them get comfortable, then show them what home means to us." Cale's cameras captured Lee Jiho's words, though the alien documentarian didn't understand the human language yet. The translation software would process everything later. What caught Cale's attention was the human's calm demeanor. Most species showed fear or rage when faced with superior force. This human seemed almost peaceful. The first Villani squad advanced through the settlement's main street. Corporal Park Minho watched from his hidden position in what appeared to be a destroyed building. The human explosives specialist had spent weeks preparing for this moment. He held a simple detonator made from salvaged electronics. "Come a little closer," Park Minho whispered to himself. "Just a little more." Cale's recording equipment picked up the massive explosion that rocked the street. The blast wasn't from any advanced weapon. It was fertilizer and fuel, turned into something devastating. 3 Villani soldiers died instantly and 2 more were badly wounded. General Vex snarled in frustration. "Cowardly ambush tactics. This is exactly the kind of savage behavior we need documented." But Kyle noticed something else in his footage. As the smoke cleared, a human figure emerged from a nearby building. Dr. Kim Nari ran toward the wounded Villani soldiers, carrying medical supplies. She ignored the weapons pointed at her and began treating their injuries. "What is she doing?" Kyle asked, zooming in on the scene. "Probably trying to torture them," General Vex replied dismissively. "These primitives enjoy causing pain." However, Cale's sensitive equipment told a different story. Dr. Kim's actions were clearly medical in nature. She was saving lives, not ending them. The documentarian had never seen anything like it. Lieutenant Yoon Hera coordinated the evacuation of human civilians from the combat zones. She moved with practiced efficiency, directing families toward prepared shelters while maintaining communication with other resistance cells. Her tactical thinking impressed Cale, who had studied military operations across dozens of species. "Target acquired," reported a Villani sniper. Human female, appears to be commanding non-combatants. Take the shot, General Vex ordered. But before the sniper could fire, Sergeant Choi Sungmin activated a mining laser that had been repositioned on a nearby rooftop. The powerful industrial tool cut through the Villani sniper's armor like paper. The human sergeant had turned peaceful equipment into a weapon of war. Kale recorded it all, his professional curiosity growing stronger. These humans weren't fighting like any species he had studied. They used creativity where others relied on strength, cooperation where others depended on hierarchy. As the first day of fighting ended, Kyle reviewed his footage in the command center. The battle hadn't gone as planned. The Villani had expected quick victory against disorganized resistance. Instead, they faced coordinated defensive operations that seemed to adapt in real time. Park Min-ho's explosions had destroyed 2 armored vehicles and blocked 3 major access routes. Dr. Kim had somehow convinced several wounded Villani soldiers to provide tactical information in exchange for continued medical care. Yoon Hara had evacuated over 300 civilians without losing a single life. Most puzzling of all, Kale had recorded a conversation between Lee Jiho and a young human named Lim Deon. The child, barely old enough to be useful, had helped repair communication equipment while discussing tactical options with trained adults. The humans treated their young as valuable contributors rather than burdens to protect. "Sir?" Kale approached General Vex carefully. "I'm seeing some unusual patterns in today's combat footage, such as, these humans don't fight like other species we've conquered. They're not driven by fear or desperation. There's something else motivating them." General Vex dismissed the observation with a wave of his hand. "Primitive instincts, nothing more. Tomorrow we'll increase pressure and this resistance will collapse. Make sure your cameras capture their final moments of defiance. The High Command enjoys watching inferior species break." That night, Kyle couldn't sleep. He kept reviewing the day's recordings, trying to understand what he had witnessed. The humans had lost ground and taken casualties, but they hadn't broken. If anything, they seemed more determined than before. Through his equipment, he had recorded something that bothered him deeply. As Dr. Kim treated wounded Villani soldiers, she had spoken to them gently, explaining what she was doing to help them heal. These weren't the actions of a savage species. Kale realized his original mission might be more complicated than expected. The High Command wanted evidence of human brutality, but his recordings showed something entirely different. These humans fought with a purpose he didn't recognize, using methods that defied standard military logic. Tomorrow would bring more combat, and Kale would be there to record it all. But for the first time in his career, he wondered if his cameras might capture truths that his superiors didn't want to see. The second day brought renewed Villani assault, but the humans had prepared overnight in ways that confused Kale's tactical analysis programs. Instead of building stronger defenses, they had scattered their resources across impossible positions. Sergeant Choi Sung-min moved through the colony's industrial sector like a ghost. The human had somehow converted 3 agricultural processors into mobile weapons platforms. Kale's cameras tracked the sergeant as he used farming equipment to create weapons that didn't exist in any military database. "This is impossible," muttered Captain Yorek, the Villani tactical officer. "Our computers can't predict their next move, because they're not following any logical pattern." General Vex studied the battlefield displays with growing frustration. "They're just animals reacting on instinct. Increase the bombardment." But Kale noticed something his military companions missed. The humans weren't acting randomly. They were adapting faster than Villani tactical computers could process. Every time the alien forces adjusted their strategy, the humans had already moved to counter it. Park Min-ho crouched in the colony's chemical storage facility, surrounded by containers that had once held fertilizers and pesticides. Now they contained something much more dangerous. The explosive specialist worked with practiced calm, mixing compounds that would create smoke screens dense enough to blind Villani sensors. "Hera, are your people ready?" Park spoke into his communication device. Lieutenant Yoon Hera's voice crackled back. "Civilians are in position. Mira's team has the power grid ready to overload on your signal." Kyle's recording equipment captured their conversation, and the translation software worked to decode their meaning. These humans were coordinating multiple operations simultaneously, something that should have been impossible without advanced command computers. Engineer Jang Mira worked in the colony's power plant, surrounded by machinery she had modified far beyond its original purpose. The human engineer had turned life support systems into weapons, routing power through unexpected pathways to create electromagnetic pulses that would disable Villani equipment. "Ready when you are, Minho," Jang Mira reported. Her hands moved confidently across controls she had rebuilt from memory. Dr. Kim Nari continued her impossible work in the medical center that doubled as an information hub. The human doctor treated wounds while analyzing Villani tactical patterns, sharing her observations with other resistance cells. She had somehow convinced captured Villani soldiers to explain their equipment weaknesses. Kale zoomed his cameras in on Dr. Kim as she worked. The human woman moved between treating her own wounded and caring for captured aliens with equal dedication. This behavior made no sense according to Villani understanding of primitive species. "She's gathering intelligence through medical treatment," Kale reported to General Vex. "Torture, as I expected," the general replied. "Make sure you record their screams." But Kale's sensitive audio equipment told a different story. The wounded Villani weren't screaming. They were talking freely, answering Dr. Kim's questions because she had earned their trust through genuine care. The battle erupted when Park Minho triggered his chemical weapons. Thick smoke filled the air, but it wasn't just concealment. The smoke contained compounds that interfered with Villani breathing apparatus and sensor systems. Suddenly, the technologically superior force was fighting blind and gasping for air. Choi, Jungmin struck during the confusion. His converted farming equipment moved through the smoke with deadly precision, guided by human spotters who seemed immune to the chemical effects. 3 Villani armored units fell to agricultural lasers that had been modified beyond recognition. Kale's cameras captured something remarkable as the smoke cleared. A young human named Lim Daeun had helped coordinate the attack by maintaining communication links that adults couldn't manage alone. The child worked alongside trained soldiers as an equal partner, not a protected innocent. "How are they doing this?" Captain Yorick demanded, studying his tactical displays. "Children shouldn't be capable of military operations." "They're not military operations," Kale realized watching his footage. "They're community operations. These humans fight as a single organism." Jang Mira's electromagnetic pulse struck the Villani command center at the perfect moment. The engineer had timed the power overload to hit just as reinforcements arrived, disabling their communication systems and leaving them isolated. Her modifications to the colony's infrastructure had turned the entire settlement into a weapon. Lieutenant Yoon Haera emerged from the smoke leading a group of human civilians who moved with military precision. But these weren't soldiers. They were teachers, farmers, shopkeepers, and children. The humans had turned their entire population into a coordinated defense force. The most disturbing moment for Kale came when he recorded a conversation between Lee Jiho and Dr. Kim. The human captain was wounded, bleeding from shrapnel, but he refused treatment until all civilians were safely evacuated. "The children first," Lee Jiho insisted, pushing away medical supplies. "Then the elders. I can wait." "You'll die if we wait," Dr. Kim replied, but she followed his orders. This behavior violated everything Kale understood about survival instincts. Leaders of other species preserved themselves to maintain command structure. These humans seemed willing to die for individuals they could easily replace. Major Seo Yunho appeared in Kale's footage, coordinating defensive positions from a bunker that had been a school cafeteria that morning. The human military officer directed operations while helping evacuate wounded civilians, somehow managing both tasks simultaneously. "Minho, how much explosive material do we have left?" Major Seo asked. "Enough for 3 more major strikes, but after that we'll need to rely on conventional weapons," Park Minho reported. "Then make them count. Protect the evacuation routes." Kale noticed that Major Seo never asked about enemy casualties or territorial gains. The human commander only cared about protecting his people and maintaining their ability to resist. This wasn't conquest or survival. It was something else entirely. As the second day ended, General Vex reviewed the battle reports with growing anger. The Villani had superior weapons, better armor, and overwhelming numbers. Yet they had made almost no progress against human resistance. How many casualties? The general demanded. 17 dead, 34 wounded, Captain Yorick reported. The humans have lost fewer than half that number. Impossible. We have better everything. Kyle studied his recordings in silence. The humans didn't have better equipment, but they had something the Villani lacked. They fought for each other rather than against their enemies. Every tactical decision prioritized protecting someone else over gaining advantage. Medic Han Junho had spent the day treating both human and Villani. Wounded without distinction, the human medic worked in an underground shelter that had become a hospital for anyone who needed help. Kyle's cameras had recorded Han Junho saving the life of a Villani soldier who had tried to kill human civilians hours earlier. Why? Kyle had asked through his translation device. Han Junho looked up from his patient with tired but calm eyes. Because healing is healing. Pain is pain. It doesn't matter what species feels it. That night, Kale couldn't process what he had witnessed. His recording equipment had captured tactics that defied military logic, cooperation that seemed impossible, and compassion that made no evolutionary sense. These humans fought with weapons made from farming tools, coordinated attacks using children as communication specialists, and risked their lives to save enemy soldiers. Nothing in Kale's education had prepared him for this kind of warfare. General Vex approached his workstation. How's the documentation progressing? I have extensive footage of human combat techniques, Kale replied carefully. Good. The high. Command will enjoy seeing how these primitives fight before they're extinct. Tomorrow we end this resistance permanently. Kyle nodded, but privately wondered if extinction was possible for a species that turned every individual into a warrior, and every community resource into a weapon. These humans didn't just fight, they transformed everything they touched into tools of resistance. He spent the night reviewing footage of Dr. Kim treating wounded enemies, Park Min-ho creating weapons from fertilizer, and children working alongside, adults as equals. Tomorrow would bring the final assault, and Kale would be there to record whatever impossible thing the humans did next. The third week of what should have been a 2-day operation began with General Vex calling for orbital bombardment. The human resistance had not only survived, but seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. Kyle's cameras had recorded the impossible transformation of a farming colony into an impenetrable fortress. Major Seo Yunho stood in the command bunker that had once been the colony's main school. The human military officer studied tactical displays while coordinating with resistance cells across the settlement. His calm leadership had turned scattered civilians into an organized defense force. Mira, what's the status of the tunnel system? Major Seo asked. Engineer Zhang Mira's voice crackled through the communication system. 70% complete. We can evacuate the entire population in 6 hours if needed. Cal recorded their conversation with growing amazement. The humans had spent weeks building an underground evacuation network using mining equipment and construction tools. They prepared for victory and defeat simultaneously. Dr. Kim Nari worked in the medical center that had expanded into multiple locations. The human doctor now supervised treatment of wounded from both sides while gathering intelligence from voluntary Villani prisoners. Her medical skills had become a weapon more effective than any gun. The Villani respiratory systems are vulnerable to our atmospheric processors, Dr. Kim reported to Major Seo. If we modify the life support systems, we can create breathing difficulties without permanent harm. Do it, Major Seo replied. But maintain medical treatment for anyone who needs it. This decision puzzled Kale deeply. The humans had discovered a way to disable Villani forces without killing them, then continued providing medical care to their enemies. No species in the galaxy fought wars with such contradictory compassion. Medic Han Junho had established a field hospital in neutral territory between human and Villani positions. The young human treated wounded soldiers from both armies while maintaining strict medical neutrality. Kyle's cameras captured something unprecedented when Han Junho performed emergency surgery on a Vellani officer while human bombs exploded nearby. "Why risk your life for enemy soldiers?" Kyle asked through his translation device. Han Junho didn't look up from his patient. "Because everyone deserves to go home to their families, even soldiers who came here to hurt us." The Vellani officer survived the surgery and later provided tactical information that helped humans avoid unnecessary casualties. Han Junho's compassion had accomplished what torture never could. Captain Lee Jiho coordinated the colony's active defense from a mobile command post that changed location every few hours. The human captain had turned guerrilla warfare into something resembling performance art, striking Vellani positions with precision that left minimal casualties on both sides. "Minho, prepare the secondary charges, but remember, disable, don't destroy. We want them to retreat, not die." Park Minho acknowledged the order while finalizing preparations for explosions that would damage Vellani equipment without killing the operators. The explosive specialist had developed techniques that neutralized threats while preserving life. Kale found this behavior incomprehensible. Every military doctrine taught maximum damage against enemy forces. These humans seemed more interested in ending the conflict than winning it. Engineer Jang Mira had converted the colony's entire infrastructure into a defensive network. Power grids, water systems, atmospheric processors, and communication networks all served double duty as weapons and survival tools. Her modifications had turned ordinary equipment into instruments of resistance. "The beauty of human engineering," Jang Mira explained to her assistant while Kale recorded, "is making things work better than they were designed to work." Pilot Oh Kyung-min flew reconnaissance missions in a damaged shuttle held together with improvised repairs. The human pilot used agricultural aircraft to coordinate attacks while evacuating wounded civilians. His flying skills had turned farming equipment into military assets. Scout Bike Suyong moved through Vellani positions like invisible smoke, gathering intelligence while avoiding direct confrontation. The human scout had mapped every Vellani installation and identified weaknesses without killing a single enemy soldier. Lieutenant Yoon Hera supervised civilian evacuations that doubled as tactical operations. Every group of retreating humans carried supplies to forward positions or intelligence back to command. The humans had turned evacuation into a form of attack. The most disturbing moment for Kale came when General Vex ordered him to edit his recordings. The Vellani commander reviewed footage of human compassion and tactical brilliance with obvious displeasure. "This makes them look too civilized," General Vex complained. "The High Command wants evidence of savagery, not sophisticated warfare." "But, sir, this is what actually happened," Kale protested. "Then make it look different. Edit out the medical treatment of our soldiers. Remove footage of their tactical coordination. Show them as brutal primitives fighting with crude weapons." Kale stared at his commanding officer with all 6 eyes wide. "You want me to falsify official records? I want you to present the truth in a way that supports imperial policy. These humans are too dangerous if other species see them as equals rather than animals." That night, Kale faced an impossible choice. His recordings contained evidence of human capabilities that would change how the galaxy viewed this species. But his duty as a Vellani officer required him to suppress that evidence. He watched footage of Dr. Kim performing surgery on a Vellani soldier while explaining human anatomy to help the patient understand his treatment. He saw Park Minho creating weapons that disabled rather than destroyed, guided by principles of minimal necessary force. Most significantly, Kyle had recorded a conversation between Major Seo and Captain Lee about the colony's future. The humans weren't just fighting to survive. They were planning for a time when the conflict ended and both species would need to coexist. "We can't hate them," Lee Jiho had said. "Hate makes you stupid, and we can't afford to be stupid." "Focus on protecting our people," Major Seo agreed. "The Vellani are just following orders. When this is over, some of them might choose to stay and help rebuild." This conversation violated every assumption about primitive species behavior. These humans thought beyond immediate survival to long-term consequences. They prepared for peace while fighting war. Commander Quan Tai-ho appeared in Kale's footage coordinating final defensive preparations from a collapsing bunker. The human commander maintained communication with scattered units while planning evacuation routes that would save the maximum number of lives on both sides. "If we fight smart instead of hard, everyone goes home," Commander Quan told his officers. That includes the Villani soldiers who are just trying to do their jobs. Kyle had never recorded anything like this. Species throughout the galaxy fought for conquest, survival, or resources. These humans fought for principles that seemed to include protecting their enemies from unnecessary harm. General Vex grew more frustrated as human resistance continued to adapt and evolve. Every Villani tactical adjustment met with immediate countermeasures that seemed to anticipate their next move. "How are they doing this?" Captain Yorek demanded. "They have no advanced computers, no tactical databases, no military training. They have something else," Kale realized while reviewing his recordings. "They have trust. Every human trusts every other human to do their part perfectly. This trust allowed humans to coordinate complex operations without centralized command systems. Farmers worked with engineers, children collaborated with soldiers, and doctors shared information with pilots. The entire colony functioned as a single organism with distributed intelligence." As the third week ended, Kyle understood that his recordings contained evidence that would shake the foundations of Villani military doctrine. These humans didn't fight like any species the Empire had conquered because they fought for fundamentally different reasons. They didn't seek to destroy enemies, but to protect what they loved. They didn't pursue victory, but sought solutions that allowed everyone to survive. They transformed every resource into tools of resistance while maintaining compassion for those who opposed them. General Vex's order to falsify the records suddenly seemed like more than military propaganda. It was an attempt to hide a truth that could change how the galaxy understood warfare, civilization, and the meaning of strength. Kale looked at his editing equipment and made a decision that would determine not only his future, but the future of human-Villani relations. The recordings contained a story that needed to be told regardless of the consequences. Kale made his choice in the darkness before dawn. While General Vex slept, the young documentarian created two versions of his footage. The official version would satisfy Imperial demands for propaganda. The real version would preserve the truth about human warfare. Captain Lee Jiho stood in the command center watching evacuation progress on tactical displays. The human captain had spent weeks planning for this moment, the final evacuation that would save the colony's population. His calm leadership had transformed panic into purpose. 90% of civilians are through the tunnel system, reported Lieutenant Yoon Hera. Remaining defenders can hold positions for 6 more hours. "That's enough time," Lee Jiho replied. "Signal all units. Begin final phase operations." Kale's cameras recorded the beginning of what humans called their last stand. But unlike other species, these humans planned their defeat to achieve victory. They would lose the colony, but save their people. Major Seo Yunho coordinated defensive positions from a bunker that shook with each Villani bombardment. The human military officer directed final operations while ensuring every defender understood their mission: delay the enemy long enough for complete evacuation. "Remember," Major Seo told his officers, "we're not trying to win anymore. We're trying to save lives. Every minute we hold gives more people time to reach safety." This strategy confused Kale completely. Military doctrine taught that retreat equaled defeat. These humans treated retreat as a victory condition that required tactical brilliance to achieve. Park Min-ho prepared his final explosive charges with methodical precision. The demolitions expert had spent days placing devices that would collapse the tunnel system after evacuation finished. His sacrifice would seal the escape routes permanently. "Hera, confirm all civilians are clear before I trigger the charges," Park Min-ho said into his communication device. "Confirmed. All non-combatants are through the sealed sections," came the reply. Kale watched Park Min-ho program the detonation sequence that would trap him in the collapsing tunnels. The human explosives specialist showed no fear, only determination to complete his mission. Dr. Kim Nari worked in the mobile medical station treating wounded from both armies. The human doctor had convinced several Villani soldiers to help evacuate their own wounded, creating cooperation between enemies in the middle of active combat. "Doctor, we need to evacuate you now," urged medic Han Junho. "5 more minutes," Dr. Kim replied, continuing surgery on a Villani officer. "I won't leave a patient to die." Her dedication impressed the wounded Villani soldiers, who began providing tactical information to help humans avoid unnecessary casualties during the final retreat. Dr. Kim's compassion had accomplished what interrogation could never achieve. Pilot Oh Kyung-min flew his final reconnaissance mission in a shuttle damaged beyond repair. The human pilot had volunteered for a one-way flight that would crash into the Villani command post, disrupting their communications during the critical evacuation period. "Target acquired," Oh Kyung-min reported calmly. "Beginning attack run." Kales. Cameras captured the pilot's final transmission. "Tell my family I flew true. Tell them we fought because we loved what was behind us, not because we hated what was in front of us." The crash destroyed the Villani command center and bought precious time for human evacuation. Oh Kyung-min's sacrifice allowed hundreds of people to reach safety. Scout Baek Soo-young led a diversionary attack that drew Villani forces away from the tunnel entrances. The human scout commanded the most dangerous mission, knowing she wouldn't survive to see evacuation completed. "All units follow my signal," Baek Soo-young transmitted. "Make them look at us instead of the tunnels." Her tactical sacrifice worked perfectly. Villani forces concentrated on the false attack, while thousands of civilians escaped through hidden passages. Engineer Jang Mira stayed behind to operate the colony's modified infrastructure systems. The human engineer had rigged every power grid, atmospheric processor, and communication network to fail simultaneously, creating maximum confusion for the enemy. "Systems ready for cascade failure," Jang Mira reported. "Once I trigger this, we'll have total blackout for 30 minutes. The engineer's sabotage would blind Villani forces during the final stages of evacuation, but operating the controls manually meant certain death when the systems overloaded. Commander Kwon Tai-ho coordinated the final defensive positions from his collapsing bunker. The human commander maintained communication with scattered units while directing artillery fire that protected evacuation routes. "Hold the line for 15 more minutes," Commander Kwon ordered. "Just 15 minutes and everyone gets home." Kyle recorded the commander's final conversation with his officers. They discussed tactical positions and ammunition supplies, but also shared personal messages for the families who would survive because of their sacrifice. The most powerful moment in Kale's footage came when Park Min-ho sent a final message to his daughter through the communication system. The explosives specialist spoke while programming charges that would seal the tunnels permanently. "Nayeon, Daddy has to stay behind to make sure everyone else gets home safely. Remember that we fought not because we hated what was in front of us, but because we loved what was behind us. Take care of your mother." Kyle's sensitive recording equipment captured the emotion in Park Min-ho's voice. The human warrior spoke of love while preparing to die, finding strength in protecting others rather than destroying enemies. Dr. Kim Nari refused evacuation until the last wounded soldier was treated. The human doctor continued working while the bunker collapsed around her, saving lives until the moment debris buried her medical station. Lieutenant Yoon Hyra supervised the final evacuation groups while coordinating with defenders who would never see safety. Her tactical skills ensured maximum survival rates even as defensive positions fell one by one. Major Seo Yun-ho died holding the main defensive line, buying crucial minutes for the last civilians to escape. The human military officer fought with weapons that should have been useless against Villani armor, but somehow held superior forces at bay through pure tactical brilliance. Captain Lee Ji-ho's final transmission came as Villani forces overran the command center. "Evacuation complete. All civilians are safe. Mission accomplished." The human captain had achieved his objective, saving his people by sacrificing himself and his defenders. This victory through defeat defied everything Kale understood about military logic. General Vex surveyed the captured colony with satisfaction tinged by frustration. The Villani had won, but at enormous cost. Worse, most of the human population had escaped through tunnels that were now permanently sealed. "Casualties," the general demanded. 43 dead, 87 wounded, reported Captain Yorick. The humans lost their entire remaining defensive force. Then why does this feel like defeat? General Vex asked. Kyle knew the answer but didn't speak it aloud. The humans had achieved their real objective, protecting what they loved. The colony was just territory. The people were what mattered. That night, Kale completed his secret recordings. He had documented something unprecedented, a species that fought not to conquer but to protect, not to destroy enemies but to save friends. Their defeat was actually victory because their goals weren't territorial. The young documentarian faced a choice that would determine the future of human-Villani relations. His recordings contained truth that could change the galaxy's understanding of war, civilization, and the meaning of strength. General Vex wanted propaganda showing human savagery. Kyle's cameras had captured something far more dangerous. Evidence that humans fought with moral principles that made them unbeatable in any conflict that mattered. He looked at his editing equipment and prepared to broadcast the truth, knowing it might cost him his life, but could save countless others in future conflicts. Kale transmitted his unedited recordings across Villani space while General Vex slept. The young documentarian knew this decision would end his military career, but the truth was too important to suppress. The galaxy needed to understand what humans really were. The footage spread through Imperial communication networks faster than military sensors could stop it. Villani citizens watched Dr. Kim Nari treating wounded enemy soldiers with the same care she gave her own people. They saw Park Minho creating weapons that disabled rather than destroyed, guided by principles that preserved life even in warfare. General Vex discovered the broadcast hours too late to prevent its spread. The commander's 6 eyes blazed with fury as he confronted Kale in the communication center. "You've violated direct orders and compromised Imperial security," General Vex snarled. "These recordings make humans look like equals instead of primitives, because that's what they are," Kale replied calmly. "My equipment recorded the truth. I won't falsify official archives to support political propaganda. Then you'll face court-martial for treason." Kale accepted his fate with the same quiet determination he had seen in human defenders. Some truths were worth dying for. Captain Lee Jiho emerged from the sealed evacuation tunnels 3 days later, leading survivors who had traveled hundreds of kilometers underground. The human captain had coordinated the escape of over 1,800 people using mining equipment and improvised engineering. The escaped humans established a new settlement beyond Villani reach, but their fame had spread across the galaxy. Dozens of species requested information about human defensive tactics, not for conquest but for protection against aggressive expansion. Dr. Kim Nari had been captured during the final battle, but her treatment of Villani wounded had earned respect from enemy soldiers. Several Villani medics requested training in her techniques, impressed by medical skills that healed rather than harmed. "How did you maintain compassion while under attack?" asked a Villani doctor through translation equipment. "Because healing is healing," Dr. Kim replied from her comfortable prison cell. "Pain doesn't care what species feels it. Neither should medicine." Her philosophy spread through Villani Medical Corps, changing how military doctors viewed their oath to preserve life. Major Seo Yunho's tactical innovations were studied by military academies across the galaxy. His strategies of fighting to protect rather than to conquer had defeated superior forces through methods that seemed impossible according to traditional warfare. The Major's final report, recovered from battlefield recordings, contained insights that revolutionized military thinking. Victory isn't about defeating enemies. It's about achieving your real objectives. Our objective was saving our people, not holding territory. Medic Han Junho's field hospital in neutral territory had treated soldiers from both armies without distinction. Several Villani officers publicly credited the human medic with saving their lives while maintaining strict medical neutrality. "He could have let us die," reported Villani Captain Zex through official channels. "Instead, he risked his own life to preserve ours. This is what civilization looks like." The medic's example inspired similar neutral medical facilities in other conflicts, reducing unnecessary casualties across multiple species. Engineer Zhang Mira's modifications to colony infrastructure became legendary among technical specialists. She had turned farming equipment into defensive weapons, life support systems into tactical advantages, and ordinary buildings into military assets. Human engineering became a phrase meaning creative solutions that exceeded original design. Parameters. Technical schools across the galaxy requested information about human problem-solving methods. Park Min-ho's final sacrifice resonated through Vellani military ranks. Soldiers who had lost comrades to his explosives later spoke of their respect for his tactical skills and principled approach to warfare. "He could have killed us easily," reported Vellani explosives expert Thek. "Instead, he used minimal force to achieve maximum effect. His weapons disabled our equipment without killing the operators. This is warfare conducted with honor." The explosive specialist's example led to development of non-lethal weapons throughout Vellani forces. Commander Quan Taiho's final stand had held superior forces at bay long enough for complete civilian evacuation. His tactical brilliance under impossible conditions became required study at military academies. Pilot Oh Kyungmin's sacrifice had saved hundreds of lives by disrupting Vellani communications at the crucial moment. His final transmission, about fighting for love rather than hate, became famous across multiple species. Scout Baek Soo-young's diversionary attack had drawn enemy attention away from evacuation routes at the cost of her own life. Her tactical sacrifice demonstrated the human ability to prioritize collective survival over individual preservation. Lieutenant Yoon Hera's evacuation coordination had achieved 0 civilian casualties during the most dangerous phase of the retreat. Her logistics expertise revolutionized emergency planning across the galaxy. Kale's court-martial became the most watched military trial in Vellani history. The young documentarian presented his recordings as evidence of human civilization that challenged imperial expansion policies. "These humans don't fight like animals," Kale testified. "They fight with principles that make them more civilized than we are. They create weapons that preserve life, show compassion to enemies, and sacrifice themselves to protect others." The prosecution argued that Kale had compromised imperial security by revealing human capabilities. The defense claimed he had preserved historical truth about a species that deserved respect rather than conquest. Vellani public opinion shifted dramatically as citizens viewed the complete footage. Polls showed majority support for peaceful contact with humans rather than military conquest. Several Vellani colonies declared neutrality in imperial expansion, citing Kale's recordings as evidence that some species deserved protection rather than subjugation. The trial's verdict surprised everyone. Kale was found guilty of violating orders but not guilty of treason. The court ruled that documenting truth served imperial interests better than creating propaganda. Kale received a reduced sentence and transfer to historical archives, where his work would preserve accurate records of first contact with humanity. Captain. Lee Jiho's new settlement received support from unexpected sources. Several Vellani colonies provided medical supplies and engineering equipment, inspired by footage of human compassion during warfare. Dr. Kim Nari was released from captivity and offered positions at medical schools throughout Vellani space. Her techniques for treating different species had applications far beyond military medicine. "I just want to go home and heal people," she said at her release ceremony. "Any people. All people." General Vex faced his own court-martial for ordering falsification of official records. The military hierarchy decided that accurate documentation served imperial interests better than propaganda that concealed enemy capabilities. The general's career ended in disgrace, while Kale's recordings became required viewing for all Vellani military personnel. 6 months after the colony's fall, first official diplomatic contact occurred between Vellani and human governments. Both species cited Kale's recordings as evidence that peaceful cooperation was possible. The documentarian, who had been ordered to record human combat for propaganda purposes, had instead created the foundation for interspecies understanding. Years later, Kale worked as director of interspecies documentation, creating accurate records of first contact with dozens of new civilizations. His principle became standard policy: record truth, not propaganda. The human colony of Kepler 442c was rebuilt as a joint Villani human research facility, studying cooperation between species rather than conquest of one by another. Dr. Kim Nari established the first interspecies medical school there, teaching healing techniques that worked across different biologies. Captain Lee Jiho served as liaison between human and Villani settlements, using his tactical skills to prevent conflicts rather than fight them. Kale's recordings were preserved in the Galactic Archives as humanity's introduction to the wider universe, a species that fought for love rather than hate, created rather than destroyed, and turned every challenge into an opportunity for cooperation. The young documentarian had been ordered to record human combat. Instead, he had documented the birth of galactic civilization based on principles that humans had demonstrated under fire. That strength comes from protecting others, victory means achieving your real objectives, and the greatest weapons are compassion and creativity. The title of his work became prophetic. He had been ordered to record human combat, and now he prayed for survival, not from human threats, but from the realization that his own species had much to learn about what it meant to be truly civilized. The humans had won their war, not by defeating enemies, but by inspiring them to become something better. This was the most dangerous victory of all, changing hearts and minds across the galaxy.